filmed for today. I'm getting increasingly bad at this, and I also haven't been writing a lot. So that's great. I thought that today, because I didn't get much footage, I would do something that a lot of people on YouTube do, which is reviews of sorts. I have been reading a lot of graphic novels this summer, and I thought I would review some of the ones from my latest batch from the library. Let's get into it. First, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, number 2. I really was very surprised by the first one. I did not expect to like it as much as I did, especially being such a big fan of the movie. But reading it, I was able to appreciate, one, how well written it was. The dialogue was amazing and it was told really, really well. But also, I was able to respect the movie even more for being such a loyal adaptation, and also for being very smart about what it kept in the movie and what it took out of the movie. The second book, I had more issues with the time jumps in it. I didn't think they were as clearly set out, and maybe this is partially because I didn't recognize as much from the movie, that it threw me off a little bit. But parts of it were great, and it was still like a fun read. It wasn't as good as the first one, not even close, but it was enjoyable still. This is another book I picked up from my local library. It's called... That's backwards? Or is that going to come out okay in the real thing? It's called Psychiatric Tales by Daryl Cunningham. And it's written by a guy who worked in a mental institution as not a nurse, but like an aide of sorts. And this was his attempt at kind of dispelling a lot of the rumors and myths that there are about mental illness. So it was kind of like a book of definitions. Oh, that chapter was horrible. There's one chapter about like celebrities with mental illness. I don't know how I felt about that. I don't know. It's a lot of stuff that I felt I already knew. And I don't know, maybe I'm more knowledgeable than the average Joe. Not to toot my own horn. But yeah, it was an okay read. It's kind of depressing. I much prefer books with stories. I've always preferred novels to like essays and stuff like that. So, not 100% my cup of tea, but if you're not knowledgeable about mental illness and would like to be more knowledgeable about mental illness, maybe it's a good choice for you. Next, I've wanted to read some of this stuff for a very, very long time, partially because Paul Giamatti was in the movie, but also because I'm really into realism, and this is supposed to be like the penultimate realist graphic novel, American Splendor. This was a weird addition to pick up because it was stories by Harvey Pekar drawn by lots of different artists, so it kind of gets you exposed to a lot of different graphic artists. As much as I am a fan of realism, I find that a lot of the things that are praised for being so good at it, I find incredibly boring. It's a hard thing to pull off. I remember going into This Is 40 being like the most excited person ever, and then it just was long and boring because it was realistic and true to life. This, I think I would have enjoyed more in the context of knowing more about Harvey Pekar and having read other of his works. Some of these were just like him thinking about what he was doing explicitly, which was like very strange. There were a few that had messages that were really good. I think I will try more American Splendor. This collection was not exactly to my liking. I'm interested in him more as a person though. The next book I read was the first one that I read in August, which has appeared in my videos already, 120 Days of Simon. He's a Swedish cartoonist slash rapper. That sounds ridiculous, I know. He put himself up to be put up in different places so his fans could kind of like house him and whatever, and then like be part of this book experience. He wasn't allowed to be in any place for more than 2 days and could not return to his own house. It becomes about like his personal relationships and his experience, which is essentially lots of sexcapades and drug taking. Each page looks like this, 4 square, bubbly characters. So it was like a fun strip to read, but not too much substance in it. 120 Days Assignment is the equivalent of something like this, where I show you snippets of my day and maybe talk to you a little bit. Maybe I learned something, probably not. It's probably the best read from this whole haul of books. Blue is the warmest color. Oh, there we go. Absolutely stunning artwork. I didn't love the movie. The book, on the other hand, very different, much, much better. This was a moving, beautifully drawn and written story. It made them so much more interesting and so much more likable, and there's like a giant thing that's different in this than in the movie, which I will not tell you about in case you are curious and want to read Blue is the Warmest Color, which if you're into graphic novels, if you are into LGBT stuff, if you're into love stories, if you're into beautiful artwork, check it out. Next, I read Chew. This is the third installment of the series of Chew. Chew is about it's in an alternate universe where chicken is illegal and like food crime is like the biggest deal ever. There's Tony Chu, who is a detective who is cybopathic, which means that when he eats anything, he gets visions of its past. If he eats an apple, he knows what tree it grew on, what pesticides were used on it, everything. This doesn't only work with food. He becomes an agent for the FDA, which is like a big deal. And so it's various adventures of him being a cannibal and all this weird stuff. The artwork is stunning. The artwork is really awesome and crisp and very comic-like. In terms of the world building and the whole thing with food being like very centric and the chickens, you buy all of it. In terms of plot, it ends up being very like mystery-ish, and all of the different cases end up intertwining. And for me it's a little bit confusing, for me it's a little bit off-putting. But overall, I've made it to the third edition and I don't plan on stopping now. Just because I'm curious, maybe also it's because I'm reading so much, so I'm forgetting where each book leaves off, which makes it a little harder for me. Overall, it's a fun read. Tony recently has a little girlfriend here who is a very cool character. She can write so vividly about food that people can taste it. It's pretty bloody. It's pretty gory, so I don't know if it's like a light read. There's so much blood. It's really gross. It's awkward to read on the train. I would recommend it, I think. Yes. As like a fun read. And the last thing I read, which I finished on the train today, is Other Lives by Peter Badge. Now this is about identity and the internet and crazy people. They're all crazy. The artwork is not my favorite style. It's kind of weird. It has kind of like a Steamboat Willie feel, but worse. I was never fully satisfied with this book. It was a little over the edge for me. It ends very, very jarringly, very unsatisfying, and like very disappointing. And not just like, oh, I didn't expect that, but like it's a bad outcome. Like it's a really bad outcome. That is the only book that I've read that I would say just don't. Maybe American Splendor, I would say try a different volume. Maybe Psychiatric Tales you could skip out on unless you are interested in learning about mental illness in a more accurate light. But yeah, Other Lives was the biggest disappointment. Blue is the Warmest Color was the biggest success. I hope to go to the library again this week and pick up some more books. Hope this wasn't the worst thing you sat through today. See ya tomorrow.